can only mean one thing. It's time for another Doctor Who monthly range release, and this time we're still with the Fifth Doctor, as we're starting off this brand new trilogy of odd adventures that are two-part stories, which is a brand new format that I don't believe has been used for a very long time with Big Finish, or at least it's never been used in this standard 1 hour format split across two different stories. It's a rather odd and unusual thing, however it's something that we're going to need to get used to for the next 3 monthly range releases, which is something that's going to be happening with the 5th Doctor, 6th Doctor and 7th Doctor, and I do believe something that we're going to be seeing a little bit more of in the future. Kicking off with a Dalek story, this time with the 5th Doctor, which is called Alien Heart and Dalek Soul. Usual in the description below, I will leave the link to go and buy this release from the Big Finish website. It is out now and it is currently $14.99. Firstly, taking a look at some of the details on the Big Finish website, the first episode is Alien Heart, written by Stephen Cole, and the second episode is Dalek Soul, written by Guy Adams. And as you can tell, both of them sort of have a little bit of a theme going on, and they're sort of a bit rhyming. That is a thing that is going to be going on with the other stories as well. So we have Cortex Fire and Vortex Ice or something like that for the 6th Doctor one with Flip, which I'm very much looking forward to. But yeah, the idea for these stories is, I want to say they're sort of co-written, but I'm guessing to an extent. Basically, you have one episode written by one person, the other episode written by the other, and they're assuming that they've sort of transferred ideas of what they want to include in either story and things like that. However, you basically have the direct divide down the middle, where you have one that's wrote one and one that's wrote the other, and it is directed by Ken Bentley, who's once again, all the people here are in fact Big Finish regulars. There's nobody new. And then the cast for this one, we of course have Peter Davison, who plays the Doctor, and Sarah's son, who plays Nyssa. So Tegan and Adric are no longer in this story. I don't know where they've gone, but yeah, it's basically a one-off episode that is not linked to the other ones. So basically random stories that have been split throughout that Doctor's era, such as in the next one we have the 6th Doctor and Flip back together again, so that's going to be an exciting release. And then in the other one we have the 7th Doctor Ace, and I do believe that's somebody called Jex or something like that. I can't remember. I've not encountered him yet, so yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing. But basically they seem to be bringing back a few people for the other releases that could do with a few more stories here and there, such as Flip, as I say. But as it is for this one, we don't really have any new companions for the 5th Doctor in Big Finish, so they've just gone with Nyssa, which is a good thing, because I kind of like Nyssa. If there's any companion out of the 3 that I would rather have with the 5th Doctor for a story, it would definitely be her. Going to the new format, because I know that it's something that probably a few people will be a bit unsure on of what exactly is happening with it. Basically, the release is exactly the same to any other. It is $14.99, and the running time is pretty much exactly the same to any other monthly range release. And by the way, the digital version is $12.99, but basically what it is your standard monthly range story. It's still 4 parts long, as per usual, much like a classic story as well. However, essentially you've got 2 episodes written by one person and 2 episodes written by the other, and to be quite honest, I don't know if it's a theme that's going to be running for the next ones as well. Essentially, you do have a story for the first half and a story for the second as well that sort of links together. So as I say, I don't know if that's going to be a thing with the other ones as well, where we sort of change setting to essentially be a slightly different story to a different plot. But yeah, I think that it's sort of its own interpretation of, right, somebody starts off the story and then somebody ends it, which I think is an interesting format, once again, something that may work for the new series. Firstly, getting onto the characters, we of course have the 5th Doctor, which once again, I've been rather much enjoying him in the previous releases that I've reviewed this year. I think that he's been a rather friendly Doctor, into things such as Spare Parts, which is quite a gruesome style of story. But with this one, we have him going into sort of new depths, more so in the second half of the story, where we have him essentially being a clone. Coming to that in a little bit, but it's the very start of the episode where we had him being quite nice, and there's somebody literally holding him at gunpoint and who's still being rather jokey. I think that he has something about him that is rather childish, and I think that the 10th Doctor can sort of bounce to him to an extent, because he can be very serious, yet sort of quite childish at the same time. It's very much something like how was reflected in Time Crash, I guess. But yeah, it's something that is, once again, a recurring theme with his Doctor, and I really enjoyed him for this one. Nyssa is also one of those characters that is a little bit like an Ace character, or even a Romana 2 that I've been previously looking at recently, where they are quite strong females. I think that Ace especially is a strong female, but with this one where we have Nyssa, a little bit of a boundary between the two, because we have her, of course, being an alien. She's from Trocken, of course, which is something that is, in fact, this is probably the first episode that I've not really heard us say much about. I think that we had a little bit at the very beginning about Trocken, because they want to forget where Nyssa came from. But once again with this one, she's a very strong female. She has a lot to do. She becomes a scientist in the second half, and in the first half she's in fact separated from the Doctor, and she needs to find out what's going on for herself once again. And we have her meeting a person called Phoebe, who is in fact sort of a little bit not really very educated on the current environment that she's in. So she goes to take her somewhere where she can get a signal on her device, and Phoebe is sort of confident that it won't work, but in fact it does because she's a scientist and has the knowledge and things like that. So yeah, she's a very strong character, and once again, she's probably one of the best for the Fifth Doctor era. And then the other people for the story, I'm not really going to go into them, to be honest, because I think they're sort of the people that you get to listen to them if you buy the release, I guess, but sort of quite a nice cast. I think that they're an interesting one that do really nicely balance out the different people. However, it's in fact quite a small one. I don't know if that's going to be a recurring theme for this new format, but for a monthly range release, it is essentially only this big, like 3 lines long, compared to about this big for a monthly range release. And then we have Nicholas Briggs as the Daleks, of course, because he's the voice of the Daleks in absolutely everything. And once again, the Daleks sound absolutely amazing. Of course, I can't credit him for the writing, but they do sound brilliant. Once again, they are very vicious, and as you can tell by the display over here and on the cover, we do have the 60s ones in it. I don't know if I sort of missed it throughout listening to this release, but I don't think there was an answer as to why there were the 60s Daleks, but to be quite honest, I'm not complaining, because they're one of my favourite designs, and I think that they look incredible, to be honest, because they should come back in a little bit more of a full scale, I think. But yeah, I think that it's nice to see that with this one, we have sort of a scientific Dalek fraction to an extent that are doing different experiments that is seen in Alien Heart at the very beginning. To have the Black Dalek in the second part as well, and references to the Dalek Skaro Council and things like that. So we have a few little Dalek things in there that are referenced throughout the classic era of Doctor Who. But once again, I don't think we got an answer as to why they were the 60s ones. I think it may have just been a fraction from the past or something like that, because I guess that could sort of happen. We just sort of get used to having this sort of timeline of Dalek development all the way through. So essentially at any point, I guess, the Doctor could encounter the all previous Daleks if he travels back far enough, sort of, I guess. Would that happen? I don't know. I think it would. And that said, if it can happen, bloody go somewhere with the Imperials, please, because I want the white and gold ones back. They are, like, amazing. Please. They just look gorgeous, to be honest. So Alien Heart sees the disappearance of a few planets that are in this solar system, and we have the humans that have been expanding out into their normal human empire, and we have this little moon base going on that has been illegally planted on the side of this planet, sort of the moon of this planet even, that is sort of, they've not developed technology to go into space yet or anything like that, because they're sort of a low developed species, and we have them on there that are essentially illegally parked, and the Daleks are sort of monitoring them, and for once they don't want to kill every single human, they don't want to even sort of disrupt the human empire. What they want to do is basically just use the moon base to go to the planet below and kill all of them instead. So, you know, if they're not killing one person, they're killing the other race instead. But yeah, it's an interesting concept that for once, they're not wanting to kill all the humans. Of course, if they do find some, they will probably kill them anyway, because with them being Daleks, they are quite vicious. And we sort of have a little bit of an experiment going on to start with. It's definitely something that is touched on more so in the first story. We have them saying how we can use these different things, and they're using sort of these odd germ things that, to be quite honest, I'm not even going to waste my time describing. I'm just going to sort of show you the cover and go, spider cell thing, that, whatever it is. It sort of looks like a mutant Haribo. But yeah, that thing is basically the whole base has got them on, and they're carrying away the different people. They're basically clearing out the base. And we also have a little bit of sort of this time thing going on where the speed of the time is going a little bit quicker. So certain parts of the base are becoming rather old very quickly. Some parts are changing, and sort of some time is being rewritten as well, meaning that some parts were there that weren't before. It's a very unusual concept, and once again, that is something that has been used in part 2 as well. Because it is audio, you can't really see the visual stuff to say, right, this has been sent back in time, which is something you could probably tell a little bit more easily in a visual version. But yeah, it does take a little while to sort of get used to the fact of, right, this is before, or right, this is another scenario or something like that. It could have been explained a little bit better or made a little bit obvious in parts. However, I still felt that I could enjoy it, and I still felt that I sort of understood what was going on. That is something that I guess I could sort of say a little bit more about part 2, especially where that happened. Moving on to Dalek Soul now, it's the continuation from the first half of the story, where pretty much all the problems that are resolved in the first half of the story are in fact done with. We just have this little link between them where the Doctor thinks everything is done, and the very ending scene of the cliffhanger is basically the Daleks coming back, and there's more of them. And then we could delve into the next story, where it turns out it's 5 years later, and we have the Doctor and Nyssa essentially have been working for the Daleks for 5 years, and we get introduced to this very odd concept where we have the Doctor being in alliance with the Daleks and things like that. It's very unusual to get your head around to start with, sort of seeing this Doctor that you're introduced to and know as being this nice person working alongside the Daleks, having them together, having this normal conversation. It says something very unusual, and it always keeps you guessing all the way through, hang on, like, why is the Doctor acting like this? And you sort of feel halfway through, is this an act? What's going on? Has the Doctor been brainwashed? Then you have Nyssa, laboratory, that's basically killing everyone, and she doesn't even care, but she does slightly. And then we have her ringing this person that's saying, right, this is not you, the Doctor is not being how he's meant to, so it's a very mysterious concept towards the beginning that very much does keep you guessing all the way through. The most interesting part of this story is essentially we do not have the Doctor and Nyssa in it. Even though I've just said they are in it, it's not the Doctor and Nyssa, it's in fact a clone of them both who have been adapted by the Daleks to basically be Dalek slaves, and they can be manipulated and things like that. So essentially for the second half of the story, the whole thing does not have the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa in it whatsoever. They're in fact gone off and they're doing normal adventures as per usual, probably with Adric and Tegan, when instead we have these clones that are still being used by the Daleks on this planet, and they think they're real but they're not. Every time they get killed, which is something that does happen in the story. I think that Nyssa gets killed at least twice, I think, but they're in fact clones and they're doing different things to each other, and it's very, as I say, it's a little bit confusing towards the very beginning. However, I still think it works. To have the development of a virus as well, which is being used to wipe out the whole of this planet below, that is in fact called Mojox, and we have the people on there that are sort of the inferior species, and we have the Doctor even saying they are inferior, and it is once again very unusual to hear the Doctor saying that. So you have your sort of average plot of the Daleks using this little serum that they're down onto the planet to kill all of them or turn them against each other. Clone version of Nyssa dying on the marshland of this planet called Mojox in the middle of nowhere, and we have her saying how nice this version of the Doctor sounds, this version that is in fact not the one that's allied with the Daleks and not the clone that has been destroyed. She's seen in security footage essentially being friends of the real version of Nyssa, and in a way we have a little bit of sympathy towards the end where we really do have this clone of her thinking, hang on, this was me, or it could have been me to an extent. Yeah, it's a rather odd scene at the very end, and I think that, once again, I think that a lot of people, myself included, say because the Daleks are appearing every single year, they've essentially run out of things to do with them. However, stuff like this shows that you can use some of the older elements in there, bring on a few of the newer stuff as well, and you can still get new Dalek stories. Even just bringing back a few of the older designs makes it slightly more interesting, and it's proof that Dalek stories can still be original. Overall for this release, it's an interesting one. We don't really tend to get the Daleks in the monthly range too much. We tended to have them a lot more in the War Doctor box sets. I think that they've been toned down a lot more since the War Doctor stuff, considering that they're essentially in every single story. But now they're over, and we're getting the Time War box set later this year as well. We don't really have too much with the Daleks in anymore, so it's nice to see a monthly range story that does in fact have them in, with the Fifth Doctor as well, because I've seen quite a lot, I think, in the past with 7 and 6, so it's nice to see something new in there with these versions of the Daleks, and it's of course nice to see them back because they are the Daleks, they are the best part of the show pretty much. But yeah, as I say, it's a good story and an interesting use of the new format. I can't really decide fully what I think of it yet because I'm waiting for the next releases to sort of show me what else they're going to achieve with this new format. But yeah, really too much to worry about with the new format really, because it is pretty much exactly the same, just with different writers in there. But yeah, overall, an interesting release. If you're a Dalek fan, you'll probably like it. If you're a monthly range fan, you'll probably like it. Also, if you're looking for somewhere to start, why not jump on with this release, considering it is in fact using the new format. Thanks for watching this review. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a big like, please subscribe if you're not already. If any questions, please do leave them below and I'll be sure to answer them at some point in the near future. Thanks again for watching, I shall see you all next time. So thanks for watching and bye for now.